In this video, I'm going to be showing you how I kitbashed and painted this custom Hunter Space Marine. I'm Nate the Feral Painter, and welcome to the video. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you're not already or you're new to the channel, then make sure you are hitting that subscribe button, and if you do enjoy this video, then make sure you do give it a thumbs up as well. So my idea behind this marine, I didn't want it to be any specific chapter or any chapter specific legion. I just wanted this to be its own sort of space marine, as though this were a sub-faction of marines that were out there just hunting heretics or aliens, or a special sort of unit that were commissioned by the Inquisition or the Space Marines to go out there and do certain jobs. Now I am going to be building, you will notice in this video that there are a couple of different versions of it. I originally built one and I weren't quite too happy with it, so I ended up doing something very similar and building a different unit. But I'll walk you through each step, and whichever one you watch or whichever version that you like, you can choose that one as well. They both got the same sort of principles, nothing's really different apart from the actual pose itself. So to start off, I'm going to be using the Primaris Reavers kit. And I chose this kit for a very specific reason, as I wanted this marine to be a little bit more tactical looking without all his heavy and bulky armor, and that's sort of where I want to go. I always try and think of a slight little bit of lore when it comes to building my custom space marines, especially this kind of hunter. He needs to be fast on his feet, especially if he's fighting Tyranids and all that sort of stuff. So that's why I chose that framework of body before I started to add all the little extras. And it's just a case of going in there and selecting a pose that you like, and that's what we're going to be using for our framework to build upon. Also, I do have another video on this channel on just a generic kit bashing space marines and things like that, so make sure you do go over and check out that video as well, because you might learn something from there as well. But let's just jump straight into it. So first of all we need is the body type and the actual unit itself. I'm also going to be using some additional parts as well. These were 3D printed, and these were actually given to me at UK Games Expo by a company called DRAGOON, and I really like these Tyranid shoulder pauldrons and parts that we can attach as alternative shoulder blades, as though their carapace just gives it a little bit more armor. If you want to go and check them out as well, I'll leave a link in the description to their page where you can go on there and potentially get some 3D parts for yourself. Alternatively, you can just raid your bit box for some additional parts. And whilst I was in there, I almost wanted him to have a lot of trophies around this miniature as well, of enemies that he'd slain and killed. And so for this, I turned to the Space Wolves kit, and they've got some parts on there where you can snip little bits off of teeth, as always. He'd killed some enemies and he'd collected their teeth, and I could also get some of them from a bolter as well. Now, which does bring us actually to his gun. Once I'd found an arm pose that I really liked, and when it comes to posing arms, I do recommend test fitting and dry fitting them, just to make sure that you're happy with the pose and the overall look of the miniature. But for this custom bolter, it was just the actual kit that came with the Reavers, the Primaris Reavers, and all I'd done, I'd snipped off, I think it actually came from a Flamer kit that comes in most generic Space Marine kits as well. I'd snipped the end off as though it was some sort of suppressor, drilled a hole in it and put some brass tubing down it. Then he also, I'm sure you've all got tons of these little scopes and stuff lying about. It's just a case of snipping them off and putting them on. And then he also wanted him to have some additional ammo, or a bolter that requires a little bit more punch to kill some enemies in his bolter, and that's why I added an additional ammo pouch on the bottom. It's quite a simple kit bash, it's just a case of finding those little bolters, but I'm sure you'll all have tons left over from Space Marine kits that you can attach to that as well. Also, one of the blades, I didn't actually use it in the final one, but I got this nice little idea that this guy had somehow custom built his own knife or blade from an actual Tyranid claw. So I just snipped off a Tyranid claw, sanded it down, took off the original knife and attached it to and glued it on to the actual handle itself. That's just an optional extra. I wish I'd have done it in the final piece as well, but it's just a cool little addition and a story that I added to that part as well. I also, again, going back into the theme of him having trophies, wanted to put some more spikes and trophies around him. So for this, I've just drilled some holes in and used some 1mm brass tubing and then drilled into a skull and attached and glued that in place. Now I'm going to be using a lot of these different skulls and stuff, including the base as well, which I'll get into very shortly. But one kit I can highly recommend, and it's just a great kit to have overall to attach them to your bases and also to convert and kitbash or even add trophies like this, which is the Battlefield Trophies kit from Games Workshop. It's got some amazing skulls and helmets and all that sort of stuff. And that's what I used for this as well, just to add some additional detail and flavour, if that's a word, or just some interesting visual things to add to the miniature itself. And alongside that as well, it's just a case now at this stage, once we've got everything built up, is to just decorate your miniature. So if you've got any little cool parts that you want to add to your miniature, I'd highly recommend doing that at this point. So this might be additional pouches or grenades or any interesting things that you want to add to your miniature, which will also include its narrative. Everything's got a use, then add them as well. For the actual custom moment of oaths, that was just using some copper sheeting. Now this is really good because it's bendable, it's pliable, and it's quite rigid as well, so it does stay in place, but you've got that option to move and bend and twist it, which you can get some really interesting shapes and stuff. You can even build capes or flags and stuff out of this stuff, and I just sort of snip them and cut them down with scissors to size and then glue them in place. Now we also wanted to make a custom servo skull for this marine as well, and this is a super easy and simple way to do. In that Battlefield Trophies set, you do get some little servo skulls. Some of them you've got to lay flat, but in there you do get some really interesting skulls, so it's just a case of drilling a hole in the bottom of them. And then for the actual wire itself, which will keep it in place, I just got some guitar strings. So I just snipped up some guitar strings, bent it into the shape that I wanted, and glued it into place. And then just if you want to add any additional wire to that, it's just a case of getting some copper wire from old phone cables, or you can go online and buy them. And I just wrapped that round it and glued everything into place. And that's pretty much the build for the actual marine himself. For the base, again, it was just really simple. I just cut up some cork. I love using cork sheets just to build some volume and interest on my bases and just layer them atop each other, and it can easily be ripped up. And then returning back to those Battlefield trophies, added a couple of little Tyranid heads and skulls and stuff just to make it more interesting, or if you've got a chapter specific, you do get some in that kit as well. And it's just a case of adding some texture to that base, and that is pretty much our marine build. And so again, just test fit everything. If you need to try anything out, if you're not happy with the pose, just make sure you are test fitting before actually committing and gluing everything in place. And now at this stage, we can move on to the painting portion. So once your miniature is built, we can now move on to priming it. Now I've gone for a really dark brown primer, and this just cuts out a few steps because one, it primes the miniature, and it also is going to give us that rust undertone, and it's also going to keep all the pouches and stuff brown and the skulls brown, which is sort of what I use as my base coat as well. I've used a VMS mahogany no peel primer. This just runs through an airbrush. There are some rattle can versions out there, or if you don't have them, however you normally prime your miniatures in black or whatever, do that, and then you can just paint it brown or just stipple on some brown. And for all you airbrush people that don't like it, you'll be pleased to know that this video does not include any airbrushing apart from when I'm applying some varnishes. So we're now going to start off with a base colour. So the first base colour that we're going to use is from Citadel, and it is Corvus Black. I wanted a bit more of like a cooler grey dark tone to this armour, so that's what we're going to use for it. And I did use, and I've seen loads of people do this, and I thought, oh god, go on, I'll give it a try. You can do it with a brush, but I thought I'll give this a makeup sponge stippling way of doing it, and yeah, it's alright. It's pretty fast and effective, and it goes on really well. And the reason I've chose to do that is because I want to leave some of that brown showing through on the armour, as though his armour's chipped down over time and revealing like some rust tones and stuff underneath. Now I know, before you jump in comments, all the lore police out there, I know ceramite doesn't rust, but this is Grimdark, this is the style that I love, and I'm willing to, you know, get rid of the ceramite doesn't rust thing, the lore, just to have a bit of fun with my miniatures. If you don't want to do it, just start off straight from a black. No one's going to hurt you or anything if you jump out of the lore. You know, that's what we're here for. We're here to have fun and enjoy the painting process. But these makeup sponges are pretty good. You can get them pretty cheap offline on Amazon, like a pack of 10 of them or something for a few pound or a few dollars. And what I tend to do with these, what I found, that because they dry out a little bit if you're not moistening them, I just simply dip it in my water, just fully submerge it in water, squeeze off the excess, and then come to my wet palette. And I just start to work my way around, stippling and chopping this onto the actual armour itself. But with I did find myself having to return back and use an actual brush as well, because even though they have got these pointy little ends which can come in handy, it didn't quite get into some of those nitty gritty corners and gaps. So make sure you are using a brush if you need to, but I'm just leaving parts of the armour exposed. I'm not being super neat or anything like that with these sponges. I'm just getting that paint on. So for the highlights of this, it's really simple. I'm just going to add some Dawnstone to the actual Corvus black, and you can try it in a 50-50 mix first of all, and then come onto your highlight points and stipple or use your sponge to add it to them. And with that sponge, it leaves behind these little tiny little marks which play really well into the scale of chipped armour. And if you want to add a tiny little bit more Dawnstone as well for some additional highlights or some brighter highlights, you can do that too as well. These sponges, this method's alright, you know, you can't always get into the actual crevices and stuff of your miniatures, which is not a problem, especially if you're just going to add some highlights. They're good for that as well. But also alongside that, you can also use them sponge in a dry brushing application. So it's just a case of using the edge of that sponge, and just like you normally would with a dry brush, you can catch some of those edges if you want a little bit of edge highlighting, or just to pick out some corners as well. So yeah, it's a good little method. I think it'd be better suited to like larger pieces like tanks and stuff, or just adding some additional highlights to your miniature depending on the look that you're after. And that's pretty much the armour done, the colour of the armour, and we can move on a little bit later into weathering it and all that sort of good stuff. But before that, there are some more additional parts to paint. So for these next few parts, I may be glossing over and just skimming over some of that painting process, as I'm sure you don't want to sit here for another 10-20 minutes into this video just me going, oh well, I've added purple here, I've added blue there. You know, all the colours and everything will be in the links in the description below, so if you want the paint list and stuff, there will be down below. But I will just be sort of glossing over some parts of it, so if you do want to return to the actual, you know, paint list just to see what colour I've painted stuff, then make sure you do that, because again, all the applications are the same. It's just adding some shadows, building up them highlights, which obviously it moves us on now to the leather. And the leathers are really simple because we've got that brown base coat prime on. First of all, we can now move into just adding some lighter brown tones and then just build them up. But one thing with leather, I always try and do it in a scratchy edge highlight motion, so the middle section is going to remain brown, and then any of the edges I'll just add some additional little scratches and lines, and then you can get a brighter color or just add a little bit of like a bleach color to the actual brown, depending on how saturated you want your leather to look, and just add some additional highlights to those as well. So for the flesh application and painting his head, it's quite simple. I'm just going to start off with a darker skin tone and just go in there and manually just base coat everything out. I tend to thin these paints a little bit more than usual, because as you start to build up, you're never going to get it in one coat anyway, depending on what paints you use. You could do, but the application might be a little bit thick. But what I like to do when I'm building up my skin tones is I'm over thinning the paint slightly, so that's so that with the thin layers that I add, with each one that I go up, it almost, because they're like semi-transparent, you can sort of see through the head. So you've got these darker spots on the head, and then when I add some additional layers, it's going to make it a little bit more opaque, but still leave some of that like brown showing through underneath. And it just creates a little bit of mottling and almost like some pigments onto his skin as well. And it just overall just enhances it and makes the skin look a little bit more realistic. And I do the same when I'm adding my highlights as well. But when it comes to adding the highlights, I'm just pulling in a little bit tighter with that light direction and only highlighting the actual points where I want the brightest spots to be. And then you can finish it off with something like Flayed One Flesh as well. Also, I'm going to make probably a separate video on this when it comes to colours, because I spend most of my time replying to colour comments when people can't say, oh, I can't get this colour and that colour. Don't worry too much about specific colours. Don't think you've got to go out and buy all these colours, because most brands do have a colour match alternative. So it's just a case of searching online for those colour match alternatives. But once you've got the main bulk and you've highlighted the eyebrows and a little section of the nose, even though actually this guy doesn't even have a nose, it's covered up with a mask. But once you've highlighted all them points and stippled those on, I'm then going to come in with a wash of Targor Rageshade, and this is just an overall wash just to tint the skin and make him look a little bit more worn and beaten up. And because he's got some scarring or some cuts on his head from previous battles, I'll just come in there with some Baserker bloodshade wash from Citadel and just allow that to flow around some of those recesses, giving the appearance as though they're either fresh wounds or wounds that are just starting to heal. Moving on now to skull, bones and the tabards. And the skulls, this is a really nice, quick and effective recipe. So I'm going to start off with 2 thin coats, dragon fang, and just apply a base coat, very much like we did with the flesh application. So I'm stippling it on. It can be, you can afford to be a little bit thicker this time if you want, but I'm also like leaving behind and letting some of that colour show through. So you may again require 2 thin coats of the 2 thin coats. But once I've done that, I'm going to come in with an additional highlight of Vampire Fang applied in the same way. So all your skulls at this point will match. Now we do need to separate them a little bit and give them a bit more of a realistic appearance. So any skull that has a human appearance or a humanoid appearance, I'm just going to give them a wash of Seraphim sepia, and that's just a nice little tone for any humanoid skulls. But any alien skulls, or like he's got a chaos one on his backpack, I'm going to go in there with Colia green, just as though, you know, it just separates the species on the actual miniature and gives a little bit of variety across the actual skulls themselves. The tabards, or the moment of oaths, these were just given a 1 simple coat of AK deck tan. And last off, the only thing to paint is the metallics. So for all the silver metallic areas, I'm going to use Iron Warriors and then follow that up with the highlights of Mournfang steel. But essentially, I'm just going to be applying this via dry brushing because we've got that brown undercoat on. First of all, when we dry brush it on, it's going to leave those microscopic scratches behind, and also in those recesses, which won't really require any additional shading. And you are going to get that little bit of brown showing through to also show some additional weathering and wear and tear to the metallic areas as well. But then after that, we dry brush the lighter silver on it, and that's the goal with this as well. You don't have to use those colours again what I've used. As long as you've got a darker steel colour and a brighter steel colour, you'll be absolutely fine. So feel free to use any of those paints. Now for some little additional golden trim sections or brassy sections, I've just given them just 1 simple coat, no additional highlights, of 2 thin coats Battle Axe bronze. Now at this point, everything on our miniature is all base coated out, and if you do want to get some of that silver steel as well and just go in there onto his armour and touch up any little bits or add some additional steel chipping, feel free to do that as well at this point. Or if you've added any decorative elements or any other details that you wish to add to your miniature at this point, now is the time to actually add it before we move on to the weathering. Now usually I don't recommend an actual varnish or anything if you're going to come in with some weathering products, but for this I just wanted to also try out some new paints and weathering products as well. And for this, because I wanted it to more stay in the recesses for when it comes to the weathering, I've just decided to give the entire miniature a satin varnish. And recently I've been using the new Kaleido Colourworks from Gallery, and I've made a couple of videos about these, so feel free to go over and check them out as well. But these varnishes and paints, my god, they are out of this world. And I'm not just saying that because I've got affiliate links below, which you can click on and get 10% off, and also with the Element Games I do get a little kickback from there as well. So all the links in the description are below, and I've got like buy me a coffee if you want to support me on this channel. But these are just phenomenal. Like, they go through an airbrush, no thinning or anything like that. But the reason I've gone for that satin as well is because everything's a little bit matte, and I wanted to fetch a tiny little bit of shine to there as well. And because of that capillary reaction, I know it's not a gloss varnish, but it will also help some of that weathering products flow into the recesses as well. But give that a little bit of time to dry, or hit it with a blow dryer, and now we can move on to the actual weathering steps. So I'm going to be trying out something a little bit different with this video from my usual videos, and that is going to be using, someone gave me these new AK panel liners, and yeah, they are really good, don't get me wrong. You know, if you're not into other weathering products that you usually see on this channel, but again, these are enamel based. It's just a pre-thinned enamel in a bottle with a really nice, the brushes are really good. The little applicator brushes, they're super thin and long, which allows you to get into those crevices. I found that mine were a little bit warped on end, so I had to mess about with the bristles a little bit, but ultimately they are a really good tool, especially if you just want to come in and just have a one dip application. I actually found myself going in and just using them like I normally would with a reductive technique. But please, if you've not got these, do not go out and buy them. If you've watched my videos and you follow along with them, then you'll know that you can just use oils or enamel washers at this stage, and you can even use acrylic washers if you really want to do that. But what's nice about these along with enamels is you can reactivate them with mineral spirits, so they're just drying everything and behave just like normal enamels, and you can just come straight back in there if you've got any like leaks, if you want them to be really precise, and just clean up any little messes with there as well. But I've got a sepia one, which is like a brown wash, and then also a black one. But to be honest, you can just do this because it's the exact same colour as Villainy Ink Goons Grime, so it's just a case of thinning down some Villainy Ink Goons Grime, getting a little thin brush and just allowing it to flow into those recesses. Because we've got that satin varnish, it'll just wick straight into those little recesses. Or if you want a dark one, you could use something like Ichor of the Damned or Decrepit Filth. But yeah, there's no reason to go out and buy these. It was just the products that I used in this video just to try out and see what I thought of them. Yeah, they're good, they're alright, they work, and if, you know, but there's nothing stopping you going out and just using your normal enamel washers, because they're exactly the same thing, they're just pre-thinned in a bottle. But alternatively, if you want to do like an all-over unifying wash like I normally do in my videos with like Goons Grime and stuff, that will also work as well for this technique that we're trying to do, and it'll just darken and deepen up some recesses, and just overall give you a little bit more contrast and definition. But basically, if you do make any mistakes with them, just get a Q-tip and some mineral spirits or some odorless thinner, and just come back in there and just tidy any little parts up. One final additional weathering step to really make this guy look like he's been through the wars and he's not even had time to like repair or clean any of his armor. I just wanted to add some rust elements to it. So for this, I've naturally turned to that amazing magic product called Dirty Downs Rust. I'm not going to go crazy with it or overboard. I'm applying it in areas what I think could naturally be worn and torn, such as knee pads and the lower half of his legs. But it's just a case with Dirty Downs Rust. It is a really unique product if you've never used it, or if you do use it, here are some little tips and hints when applying it in this way. So one thing I always like to do is place it inside my pocket around 10 to 15 minutes before I've actually started using the products, or you can even place it in between your legs, but not like that. Don't be getting those ideas. Don't do that. But just underneath your leg, just to basically what I'm trying to do is get some body heat to it. So warming it up really helps. And then unfortunately you do need to shake the shit out of the product, because it does get a little bit of sediment stuck in the bottom, but that's where all the juicy magic stuff is. So make sure you are giving it a really good shake if you want to get a cocktail stick, and make sure that there's nothing stuck to the bottom. and then it's just a case of I pre-dampen my brush. And so the rule with Dirty Downs rust is the thicker that you apply it, the more darker the actual rust effect is, and you do get a bit of texture with it as well. Or if you want to add some water to it, or the lighter application, the lighter or more orangey yellow that your rust tone will go. I have made a video about Dirty Downs rust, but I think it needs an update as well, because I have got a ton more like hints, tips and tricks that you can do with it. But I'm just going in there and just adding some streaks and just weathering and adding some rust to the certain parts. Now, one question I always get asked is, can you varnish over the top of it? I've not varnished from this point. I can't give any advice around that. I'm not sure if it will. If you are going to varnish it, maybe give it quite a lot of time to cure, because it is water soluble. So that means, like enamels, we can reactivate it with water and just erase it to get rid of it, or you can like further it, make it even have more little tonal difference and colours. But when it comes to varnishing it, I'm not 100%. If I were going to do it, I'd probably leave it a couple of days to fully cure, and then maybe come in with a varnish, but I'm not sure what that would do in regards to reactivating the product itself. Before we get into the final part of this video, now's a really good time to actually do your base, because it'll make sense why in just a second. But you can, for whatever basing scheme you've gone for, it's entirely up to you if you've got like a grey city base or a grassy base or whatever. I always like to use pigment powders on my base. It's just a really quick and effective way of getting your bases looking good, but also dusting it up onto their legs really ties that miniature into its environment. And this will make sense why I've done it at this stage, because we can now move on to some optional if you want some blood effects. So I'm going to add the blood effects in two stages. One, I'm going to use an older, more coagulated blood that's been there some time. And to do this, you can use something like Blood for the Blood God, or any products that's got like these blood effects. It's essentially just a glossy acrylic paint. And I'm going to add a couple of drops, or depending on how much you want, or just one drop of black ink, or just even black paint. We're just going to darken that red down a little bit, but still we want that glossiness to it. And if you don't have these to hand, get some red, black, add some gloss varnish to it, mix them up, and this is going to act as our really nice like dark older blood. And you can either stipple this onto the miniature, or in my case I like to flick and speckle this on. So I apply some to my brush, get something like a sharp tool, a paper clip, cocktail stick, anything along those lines, and just start to splatter it and all over your miniature and its base. And then after, you can also come in with just some fresh clean blood if that's even a thing, just some fresh blood, just to show some newer blood on the miniature. And I'm just again use that in a speckling motion, and also stippled some around the Tyrannid's head. If you want to change the colour of your blood, if you want like a purple or a green or whatever type of blood you want, it's just a case of simply switching up that colour. But you don't have to add this stage, but I've liked to add it as though, you know, he's slain tons and tons of enemies, and he's just left all that blood like spilled up his armour, or he's been in the middle of a battle, and yeah, he's just absolutely caked in it. And that sort of brings us to the end of this tutorial. So I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope you've been able to take something away from it, whether it be the kit bashing elements or some different approaches to actually painting it. But ultimately, I hope you have enjoyed this kit bashing video. Do you like these sort of kit bashing videos where I do a build and then a painting after? Just let me know in the comment section below. And again, I am thinking about actually opening up my members section. So if that's something you would be interested in, let me know in the comment section below. And also, if you want to change any colours that you've seen, if you want a different armour colour, I've got tons of video here on this channel with specific chapter recipes, so be sure to check them out as well. If you're not already, remember to hit that like button, give it a smash it or thumbs up, whatever the YouTubers say these days. And it'd also help me out if you could just hit that subscribe button, because looking at my analytics, there's still over 60% of you that come and return back to this channel but are not subscribers. What are you doing? I'm trying to get to 100k or even just 50k. That'd be happy with me. So yeah, it really help me out if you could hit that subscribe button as well. But just a massive thanks from me and the additional support, and leave me a comment below. It helps the algorithm and all that sort of good stuff. But again, just thank you so much for your time. I've been Nate the Feral Painter, and I will catch you in the next video.